The odds of a trade deal between Canada and the United States before August 1st are beginning to slip. Today, President Donald Trump said talks are not headed in the right direction.
August 1st is going to come, and we will have most of our deals finished, if not all. We haven't really had a lot of luck with Canada. I think Canada could be one where they'll just pay tariffs, not really a negotiation.
Ravi Kahlon is the BC Minister of Jobs and Economic Growth, and he joins me now. Nice to see you, Minister.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So President Trump said today negotiations with Canada are not going very well. In fact, he says he may just go ahead with tariffs. And that could mean, a punishing 35% levy on our exports as of next week. What's your reaction to the latest development?
Well, I'm not surprised to hear the president say that. Since he's become the president, all we've seen is uncertainty, not only for British Columbia or Canada, but now for the entire world. And, so I'm not surprised to hear his rhetoric. I know that their teams are working away and trying to find a path forward, but I'm not optimistic. I think that even if we get a deal, who knows if the president will honor a deal, given that we had one with him, with Kuzma, and he still doesn't acknowledge that as something that he agreed to. So I think the uncertainty will go on for his term, and it's important for us in British Columbia and for folks across Canada is to do the work we have to do, and we have to pivot. We have to find new opportunities, and that's what we're focused on here in British Columbia.
So you're not optimistic, and I think we can say the same about Carney's negotiators as well, who were just in Washington to meet with American officials this week. Minister Dominic LeBlanc and Ambassador Kirsten Hillman seem to be downplaying the possibility of a deal by the August 1st deadline. What are you hearing about the progress of those talks?
Well, I don't have any updates from the recent meetings, but I can say that they've got a tough job. And, of course, we want a deal. We want a fair deal, but we're also realistic. I think Minister LeBlanc and the team have a tough job. And again, you never know what's going to happen in those discussions. We've been hearing new things come up. We had copper tariffs come up. Then we had the steel tariffs. And every day that there's bad headlines in the U.S., a new tariff is announced. So I think this uncertainty is going to go forward. I wish the Minister LeBlanc's team the best. Of course, it's in the interest of the entire country that we find a good path forward. But we also have to be realistic that even if we find a path forward, who knows what will happen the next month or the month after that when the president gets onto Truth Social and puts something new out.
What is a good path forward? Do you think that Canada should sign a deal that includes any of Trump's tariffs?
Well, I think that that's a challenging question, but I would say for us, from a British Columbia perspective, softwood lumber has to be part of that. I know that across the country, there's a lot of focus on auto workers, and in British Columbia, we're thinking about auto workers as well, because whatever is good for Ontario is also good for British Columbia. But you got to think about British Columbia and softwood, because BC provides the second most amount of softwood lumber to the United States from any country in the world. Now, I'm not talking about just provinces. I'm talking about we're second overall if you were comparing all the countries that are producing softwood and sending it to the U.S. So it's going to have a sizable impact on communities here. I'm really concerned for working families, and that has to be a key part of it. But again, I understand that it's going to be a challenge. That's why the negotiations have to be one part. But the things that we need to do to strengthen our local economies, that has to be the central piece, I think, as we go forward.
I'm glad you raised softwood lumber because it's something that, as you say, matters a great deal to your province. And we know that Trump's Commerce Department is preparing to hit Canadian exports with potentially huge tariffs. And I was looking at some of the rhetoric coming out of the U.S. Lumber Coalition. They are very active on this file, as you know. And they say that one of the big companies in your province will get a kick in the teeth from the next round of duties. That sounds like a problem. How are you preparing for that?
Well, it's hard to prepare because the uncertainty that comes from just random numbers that are coming out of the U.S. And, I'm really worried about the workers here in British Columbia, and I'm worried about the workers in the United States as well. We provide so much lumber to the U.S., And if you look at California and them trying to rebuild after fires, it's going to make their job very difficult. And housing, like in Canada, is a major issue in the United States of America. And any major tariffs on Canada will increase the cost of housing in the US. So they think they may be solving a problem, but they're actually creating a bigger problem for themselves. So workers on both sides of the borders will pay the price for whatever comes out of the president's mouth on any given day.
So hopefully the housing lobbyists have more sway than the lumber lobbyists, is what you're saying there.
Yeah, I'm not sure who has lobby right now with the president. It seems to be changing day to day. But the nervousness we feel about forestry, I think, has been reflected in some of the comments the prime minister has made. We just continue to urge the prime minister and Minister LeBlanc and the team to make sure that forest sector from British Columbia is considered equivalent to the challenges the auto industry is facing in Ontario.
What about your Premier, David Eby? He suggested this week that BC may actually be open or willing to talk about a quota on softwood lumber exports. The industry has long been diametrically opposed to that sort of thing. Why is your Premier pitching that now as a possibility?
Well, we always want to find a path. If we sit in one position and the U.S. sits in one position and nobody budges, there will be only bad outcomes for everyone. And so the Premier wants to be practical. He wants to try to find a solution that can continue to support workers in British Columbia and Canada, but also be good for the United States. And so we're really practical about what we need to do and how we need to move forward. And I think the Premier was just trying to be as accommodating as we can, but that patience, that flexibility is only so limited, but we'll see what happens in the discussions in the next weeks ahead.
If the talks collapse with the U.S., if we don't get a deal with Trump, what should be our next move? Should Canada ramp up its retaliatory tariffs now?
Well, first off, we've been preparing like there will be no deal. We have 18 projects, $20 billion of investment that we are expediting through our process. We are preparing as if the U.S. will do the worst case. And I know some people in British Columbia, across Canada, say, well, it won't be that bad. We as elected officials can't be operating in an environment where we're hoping for the best. We have to plan for the worst. And so that work is happening. And if these tariffs come in on the size of numbers that we're hearing, then it's going to require Canada to be at the table working with us to not only support workers in the industry, but I think more importantly, focusing on where does our forest industry go now? How do we pivot? What new markets can we find opportunities on? And what kind of products can we create that can support us domestically and help the industry pivot? That's going to be a major focus, and we need the federal government there at the table with us.
The talks are in a very tenuous position, as we've been discussing. The relationship is just on such shaky ground. Jobs are on the line, as you've pointed out. What do you say to Canadians who are worried about what the future holds?
Well, I say to Canadians, to British Columbians, to anyone that's concerned about this is, although it will be a challenge, and I'm not going to pretend that it's not going to be a challenge for people to deal with massive increases in tariffs, I am actually very hopeful, because what I'm seeing right now is a response across the country around interprovincial trade barriers, seeing movement here. We have business leaders, Indigenous leaders, labor leaders, everyone at the table saying, how do we find ways to grow the economy, create opportunities for people, make sure workers have good paychecks. That movement we're seeing across the country, in particular here in British Columbia, gives me a whole great deal of hope that not only are we going to be able to navigate this, but we're actually going to be stronger because of the situation. But we're going to have to go through a bit of a challenging time before we get there.
All right, let's leave it there. BC Minister of Jobs and Economic Growth, Ravi Kahlon, appreciate you coming on, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to see you.